Okay, this video is on how to use the step sequencer to program drum patterns. Now, the step sequencer is something brand new to Logic. Only the latest version has a step sequencer built into it. Before, you could still step sequence drum patterns, but you had to use specifically the Ultrabeat drum machine that comes with Logic, which is still in Logic, and you can still step sequence with that. But the really cool thing about the new step sequencer is that you can not only step sequence drum parts, but you can also use it for any instrument, whether that's a synthesizer, a bass guitar, whatever sound that you want. You can actually use a step sequencer to program music that way. So if you were using loops before in an earlier project, you may have chosen pattern loops, which they look a little bit different. The icon's a little bit different, and when you drag it into a track, it looks like a bunch of tiny little dots. You can zoom in on that. Just a bunch of little tiny dots that are all on a grid. That looks very different than a standard MIDI type of loop or an audio loop, which of course has waveforms on it. So this is what a step sequencer track looks like. If you want to, though, create your own, especially for drums, you can certainly do that. So in this case, I've already got a software instrument loaded in. It has to be a software instrument. And I can go to my browser, and I can choose a drum kit. Maybe I want an acoustic drum kit. Maybe I want an electronic drum kit. I'm going to use Beat Machine. We'll see how that sounds. And now I've got that loaded up. And in my actual track lane, I can right-click, and I can choose Create Pattern Region. That will create a 4-bar empty pattern region. I'm going to turn on my cycle mode, so I'll have that kind of looping as we go. But there's nothing in here. So I've got the instrument assigned. Notice that the step sequencer window pops up automatically. I've got an instrument assigned that I chose a while ago. All the various sounds. I can scroll down. Some hi-hats. I can also make this taller too if I want. There we go. So I can just start programming this in. Now when you look at this view, it just looks like a bunch of rectangles, but it's actually showing each step within a beat and within a bar. In this case, if you go to the far right, you see that it says 16 steps, the default amount. So 16 steps is showing, as we count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. That is actually showing us by default 16th notes. So in other words, this section of 4 boxes, then we have a line. So that's showing basically beat 1. So it's like 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So for example, if I want a kick drum on each beat, that's going to be 1 for every 4 16th notes. So I can start hitting play. Okay, so you can hear that pattern. Notice that even though this is only 16 steps, and my region up here was actually 2 bars, it's just going to keep on repeating once it gets on the 16 steps. If I want it twice as long, I can just go in here and say, I need that 32 steps. And of course, I can change the pattern. So I'll go ahead and leave it right here, 32 steps, that's 2 bars. And I'm going to do what a very basic drum pattern. You can never really go wrong if you start with this, if you've never programmed drum beats before. And that is putting kick, I'm just doubling it up here. And that's putting a kick on beats 1 and 3. So here's 1 E and a, nothing on 2, 3, nothing on 4, and then repeating that. And then putting a snare sound, putting that on beats 2 and 4. Not very interesting, but it's at least the good starting basic building blocks. That's what I'm looking for. That you just really can't go wrong if you start with that. But of course now I can start going in and saying, yeah, but I want to add some extra kicks in here. See what that sounds like. So all I did was, of course, just click on and off little slots of my steps, even as it was playing. Now, if it bothers you that when you click, you hear the sounds, especially when you're playing back, you can click this green button. It looks like a little 5-pin DIN of a MIDI cable. You can turn that off, and it won't make a sound when you click on it. So whichever you prefer on that. Okay, so I've got this things started. I guess if I want to do like a 4 on the floor, more like a dance heavy thing, I want to beat, I want to kick on every beat, and then I've got these little extra kicks in here just to make the pattern a little more interesting. Okay, so I've got that. Maybe I'll see whatever other sounds we've got here. That's kind of cool. So I can even just drag across here. Maybe I want this. Whoops. You can draw pictures if you want, or not. No, definitely didn't like that. So you can just do lots of trial and error until you get something that you like within your pattern. And of course, there it is. It's already up there in the actual track lane. Now, to go a step further, one of the really cool things you can do is that you can actually tell a particular instrument row, like the one I've selected. You can tell it certain things, like I want this to actually be eighth notes. Or values. You can change stuff there. You can mute solo. You can do various stuff within the actual kind of almost like a mini track in a way. But I can also tell it how I want that to play back. By default, you see an arrow to the right, which means it's going to play from left to right. But I could also make it play backwards. So you see that one lane is starting from the right and moving to the left. All the rest are still going to the right. I can make it go forward and then back. So you can see how just that click is going all the way forward 32 steps and then all the way backwards while the other ones just keep looping. Or I could have it randomly choose that. It's just going to randomly jump around, and if there happens to be one of these lit up, we'll hear it. So that can be cool if you, say if I turn all of these on. Oops. Well, no, maybe I don't want them all. I'm just going to, again, take a few out of here. It's like the fewer boxes you have when you have it on this random mode, then the fewer hits you're going to hear, because it's going to randomly select ones that don't have anything in them. Okay, so just really cool things that you can do. That gets especially interesting once you move into doing step sequencing with a non-percussive, non-drum kit. If you start moving into like a synth type of sound and you start doing all these lanes with randomly choosing in different orders, it can get some really interesting patterns, which we'll do in another project. But this particular one is just using a step sequencer like this. It's something that some people prefer instead of playing it manually or say using a loop or a drummer track, is them actually controlling it by what step. And this was actually what the earliest sequencing was, this type of thing where you're actually programming in a particular step within a pattern. So have fun creating beats this way.